Cowboy finds gold on Apache land but leaves it. 13 years later, tribe repays him. The sun hung high over the Arizona desert, beating down relentlessly on the dusty plains and rocky hills. The wind blew in hot gusts that carried the faint scent of sagebrush and dry earth. In this lonely stretch of land, a cowboy named Elias Harper rode his horse, Dusty. Elias was a man of few words, with a face weathered by years under the sun and eyes that seemed to see far beyond the horizon. People in the nearby town often described him as quiet, fair, and trustworthy. He did not belong to any one place, instead choosing to wander the vast open lands, living by his own rules and relying only on his skills and wits to survive. Elias had been on the move for days, following trails he knew only by memory, looking for a new place where he could rest his horse and find water. The desert was unforgiving, and every day posed challenges that could easily bring misfortune to an unprepared man. But Elias was experienced. He could read the tracks of animals, find water in the driest washes, and predict weather changes by watching the clouds and wind. That afternoon, as he guided Dusty along a narrow canyon path, something unusual caught his eye. A tiny flash of gold shimmered from beneath the rocks. Elias slowed his horse, his heart beginning to beat faster. He dismounted carefully and approached the spot, brushing away the dust and stones with his hands. The glint became brighter, and it didn't take long for him to realize the truth. He had found gold. A vein of pure, glittering gold ran along the canyon wall, sparkling under the afternoon sun. Elias felt a mix of excitement and hesitation. The thought of wealth and comfort passed through his mind like a dream he had never dared to chase before. He imagined a life where he could own a small cabin, eat well every day, and finally rest without the constant worry of survival. For a moment he considered taking the gold for himself, quietly and carefully, so no one would ever know. But as he knelt there, studying the golden streak, another thought struck him. He remembered the stories he had heard from traders and travelers about this land. It belonged to an Apache tribe, one of the oldest and most respected in the region. They were known to be brave, wise, and fiercely protective of their territory. It was sacred land to them, passed down through generations, and it was not meant to be disturbed for personal gain. Elias leaned back against the rock and let Dusty nibble on a sparse patch of grass nearby. He thought about what it meant to truly do the right thing. Gold could bring comfort, but it could also bring trouble, greed, and danger. He knew that taking what was not his could invite misfortune, and deep inside, he felt that respecting the land and its people was worth more than any treasure. Night began to fall, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange. The desert was quiet except for the occasional call of a distant coyote and the rustle of leaves in the dry wind. Elias built a small fire and cooked a simple meal, thinking about the gold and what he should do. By the flickering firelight, he made a decision. He would leave the gold where he had found it. He would mark the location subtly, perhaps with a small pile of stones or a bent branch, enough to remember it himself but not to attract attention. The gold was not his to take. The night was cool, and the fire crackled as Elias lay on his bedroll, gazing up at the stars. He wondered if anyone had ever found this gold before. Maybe the tribe had hidden it themselves, or perhaps it had lain there untouched for centuries. The thought of the gold being part of something greater than himself gave him a strange sense of peace. He realized that some things were not meant to be owned. They were meant to exist, to be respected, and to remind humans of their responsibilities. The next morning, Elias woke early, the air crisp and silent. He walked back to the canyon and studied the gold vein one last time. He set a small stack of rocks nearby as a marker, a simple sign for himself, nothing more. Then, without touching the gold, he mounted Dusty and rode back toward the town, his mind at ease. He did not speak to anyone about what he had found. There was no boast, no secret plan, only the knowledge that he had done the right thing. As he returned to the town, Elias resumed his normal routine. He visited the general store to buy supplies, repaired fences for farmers in exchange for meals, and spent his evenings sharing stories with locals about life in the desert, never mentioning the gold. Life continued for him in a modest, quiet way. Though he sometimes thought about the gold, he did not regret leaving it. The satisfaction of having made the right choice stayed with him, deeper than any treasure could. Years passed, and Elias became a familiar figure to the people in the area. Children would watch him ride by, their eyes wide with curiosity, and adults would nod in respect at the sight of his steady, calm demeanor. He helped where he could, always fair and always honest. His reputation grew not because of wealth or power, but because of his integrity, a quality that became more valuable in the harsh desert life than any gold could ever be. Every now and then, Elias returned to that canyon, not to claim the gold, but simply to see it, to witness the quiet beauty of the land. The gold remained untouched, glinting in the sun, a silent reminder of choices made and respect shown. He never left signs that could attract treasure hunters, and he never told a soul where it was. It was a secret between him, the land, and the people who had lived there long before him. Elias Harper's story of restraint and respect began to ripple slowly, though subtly, through the town. Traders passing through spoke of a lone cowboy who had stumbled upon gold but had left it where it belonged. Some thought it was foolish, but most admired the wisdom in his decision. It became an example of honesty and integrity, a story that parents told their children to teach them the value of doing what is right, even when no one is watching. As the seasons changed, the desert transformed with bursts of wildflowers after rains, scorching heat in the summer and cold winds in the winter. Elias moved with it all, learning from the land, respecting it, and living simply. The gold stayed hidden in its canyon, untouched by greed, as if it were waiting for the world to prove itself worthy. Elias understood that life had already given him the greatest reward, a clear conscience, the respect of others, and a quiet life in harmony with the desert. Even when faced with temptations or hardships, Elias never thought of taking the gold. Once, a group of miners came through the town, sharing rumors of rich veins and hidden treasures in the desert. They spoke eagerly of gold and silver, imagining fortunes and luxury. Elias listened quietly, offering advice on safe routes and water sources, but never spoke of the vein he had discovered. The gold remained his secret, safe not because of locks or fences, but because of his choice to leave it alone. The desert held many dangers, storms, wild animals, and the occasional outlaw, but Elias faced them all with courage and skill. He helped travelers who were lost, guided cattle through treacherous passes, and assisted the townsfolk whenever they needed him. Through all of this, he carried the memory of the Golden Canyon with a sense of reverence, a symbol of a decision that defined him more than any act of bravery or skill. In quiet moments, when the sun dipped below the mountains and the desert cooled, Elias would think of the Apache and their sacred land. He felt a deep respect for their traditions and history, knowing that the land held stories and memories far older than any human could measure. Leaving the gold untouched was more than a choice. It was an acknowledgement of something greater than himself. The canyon, the gold, the desert, and the tribe were all connected in a way that Elias understood but few could. It was a place of beauty, danger, and history, and it demanded respect. By walking away, he had not lost anything. Instead, he had gained something far more enduring, the understanding that true wealth lies in integrity, respect, and honor. And so, Elias Harper continued his life in the desert, a cowboy known for his honesty and courage. The golden vein lay quietly in its canyon, untouched, shimmering under the sun as a silent witness to a man who chose the right path, even when no one was watching. It was a choice that would one day return to him in a way he could never have imagined. But for now, he rode on, guided by the principles he held dear, leaving a legacy of integrity in the wide, open desert. The years passed slowly in the Arizona desert, and Elias Harper's life continued its quiet rhythm. Though he had left the gold untouched, life did not always treat him gently. Harsh winds swept across the plains, and scorching summers tested his endurance. He moved from one small settlement to another, always keeping Dusty by his side, finding work wherever it was needed. He mended fences, guided travelers through dangerous passes, and helped ranchers drive their cattle across the vast, unforgiving terrain. For every day of labor, he earned just enough to survive, but Elias never complained. He had learned early that life in the desert demanded patience and humility. Elias' reputation grew in the towns he visited. People spoke of him in hushed, admiring tones. They respected his honesty, his fairness, and the way he treated others with quiet dignity. Children would often follow him at a safe distance as he rode by, their eyes wide with wonder. He never rode fast to show off, never boasted about his skills, and never spoke of the gold he had found. That secret stayed with him, a quiet reminder of the choice he had made. Despite the steady rhythm of his life, there were moments of loneliness. Nights in the desert were cold and silent, with only the stars for company. Sometimes he would sit by a small fire, gazing at the flickering flames, and think of the canyon where the gold lay hidden. He never felt regret, but he felt a strange kind of longing, an awareness of the world's richness that he had chosen not to claim. In those moments, he understood that the greatest rewards were not material. Respect, honor, and the knowledge that he had done the right thing gave him a quiet strength that carried him through the hard years. Life, however, was not without its hardships. One winter, a sudden storm hit the desert, dumping heavy rain that turned the dirt paths into mud and caused rivers to swell dangerously. Elias had been guiding a small herd of cattle through a narrow pass when the storm struck. Lightning split the sky and thunder rolled across the canyons. He worked tirelessly through the night, protecting the animals, leading them to higher ground, and ensuring none were lost. By dawn, he was exhausted, soaked to the bone, but the herd was safe. The ranchers who had hired him were grateful, offering him payment and shelter, but Elias politely refused. He had no desire for wealth, only for the satisfaction of doing his duty. Even during peaceful times, Elias faced challenges. Bandits roamed parts of the desert, taking advantage of travelers and isolated settlements. On more than one occasion, Elias found himself confronting men with weapons and harsh intentions. But he was clever, calm, and resourceful. He avoided unnecessary fights, using his knowledge of the land to outsmart those who sought to harm others. Stories of his courage spread quietly among the people, and his name became known as one of someone who could be trusted, someone who kept promises and acted with integrity. Meanwhile, the memory of the golden vein in the canyon never left him. Occasionally, he would ride back to the general area where he had found it, not to take it, but to simply look at it from afar. The canyon remained, as he remembered, silent, beautiful, and untouched. The gold shimmered in the sunlight, almost like a reminder from the earth itself that some things were meant to remain sacred. Elias often thought about the Apache tribe who had lived on the land for generations. He wondered if they ever noticed him in the distance, watching respectfully. He hoped they understood that he had honored their territory, that he had left their treasure untouched. Time moved forward, and with it came change. Settlers pushed further into the desert, building towns and claiming lands for farming and ranching. Trade routes expanded, and more travelers passed through the region. Yet, Elias stayed mostly to himself, careful to avoid disputes over land or resources. He was known for his honesty and quiet ways, but he was also respected for keeping his distance, never interfering in the lives of others unless help was needed. One evening, Elias found himself at a small town celebrating a harvest festival. Families danced and laughed, children ran through the streets with painted faces, and the scent of roasted meat and sweet pies filled the air. He watched from the edge of the crowd, smiling faintly. Though he had spent many years alone in the desert, he appreciated these small glimpses of human connection. People came to him for guidance, for advice, and sometimes simply for the reassurance of knowing he was there. He listened patiently, offering words of wisdom without judgment, always calm and measured. As the years went on, Elias faced personal struggles that tested his resolve. He experienced sickness, and there were moments when he feared for his life. He also saw friends and fellow travelers fall to illness or accidents. Each loss weighed heavily on him, reminding him of the fragility of life. Yet he continued on, finding strength in his routines, in the quiet work he performed, and in the knowledge that he had chosen a path of integrity. Despite hardships, he remained kind and generous. When travelers ran out of water or food in the harsh desert, Elias shared what little he had. When families struggled to rebuild homes after storms, he lent his hands and skills. He never expected repayment, knowing that acts of kindness were their own reward. In this way, he quietly became a part of the fabric of the region, a figure who embodied fairness, courage, and respect for others. During these years, Elias occasionally wondered about the gold. He imagined what it might be like to have wealth, to live in comfort. But he always reminded himself that taking it would betray the trust he had promised to the land and its people. The thought of claiming the gold and disrupting the sacred territory of the Apache tribe filled him with unease. So he let it remain hidden, untouched, a secret that only he knew. In doing so, he found peace, and that peace carried him through long, lonely days and difficult nights. Life continued in cycles of work, travel, and quiet reflection. Elias saw the seasons change, the desert flowers blooming in the spring, the intense heat of summer, the sudden storms of autumn, and the cold, still winters. Through it all, he remained resilient, learning from the land and the people he met. He grew older, his hair graying, his face lined with the years of living under the sun, but his spirit remained strong. He had come to understand that life's true riches were not found in gold or wealth, but in character, integrity, and the respect one earns from others. One day, as he guided a small group of travelers through a rocky pass, he noticed tracks in the sand. They were fresh, and he recognized them immediately. They belonged to members of the Apache tribe. Elia's heart stirred with respect and admiration. He had often wondered if the tribe had noticed him in the past, if they had seen the way he respected their land. Now, seeing the tracks, he felt a quiet hope that they knew of his choice to leave the gold untouched. Over time, the connection between Elias and the desert grew deeper. He could sense changes in the weather, read the movements of animals, and predict the approach of travelers long before they appeared. Dusty remained his loyal companion, and together they faced the challenges of the wilderness. Life was not always easy, but it was honest and true, and Elias found satisfaction in that truth. As years turned into more than a decade, Elias became a living legend among the local communities. People spoke of him as the cowboy who had found gold but left it for the good of others. His story was told around campfires, in small gatherings, and in passing conversations. It was not a tale of wealth or adventure, but of wisdom, integrity, and respect for the land and its people. Elias continued to ride the desert trails, often reflecting on the passage of time. He thought of the canyon, the golden vein, and the Apache tribe. Though he had never sought recognition, he hoped that someday, somehow, the tribe would know that he had honored their land. He had no idea how that might happen, but he held on to the hope that good deeds, even ones done quietly and without reward, could return in ways he could never imagine. The desert remained a place of beauty, challenge, and mystery. Elias Harper had learned to live in harmony with it, respecting its dangers and cherishing its gifts. Every rock, every river, and every canyon held lessons, and he absorbed them quietly, using them to guide his life. The gold he had found remained a distant, silent memory, a reminder of the choice he had made long ago. Through hardships, through loneliness, through the passing of years, Elias never wavered in his principles. He continued to help those in need, protect travelers, and respect the land. In doing so, he earned a reputation not for wealth, but for character, a reputation that would follow him for the rest of his life, quietly building the foundation for a story that would one day come full circle. Even as he aged, Elias Harper remained active, strong in body and mind. The desert was his home, and he moved through it with the knowledge of someone who had truly learned its ways. He understood that life was fragile, fleeting, and full of unexpected twists, but he also understood that choices mattered, that the right choice, even when difficult, could shape a life in ways no gold could. And so the years continued, carrying Elias through a life of simplicity, honesty, and quiet adventure. The gold remained untouched, the desert remained vast, and the Apache tribe remained a silent presence in his thoughts. Though the world around him changed, he remained the same, faithful to his principles, loyal to his conscience, and patient in the knowledge that someday, perhaps, the world would repay the respect and integrity he had shown. Years had passed since Elias Harper first left the gold untouched in the remote canyon. Time had shaped him into a man both wise and steady, with the calm confidence of someone who had lived through hardships and learned from them. His face had more lines now, his hair more streaks of gray, but his eyes still held the same quiet determination and sharp awareness of the world around him. The desert continued its endless cycles of heat and cold, storms and calm, and Elias moved with it. He had grown accustomed to reading the subtle signs of the land, the scent of rain on dry earth, the tracks of animals in the sand, and the changing color of the sky as it hinted at the coming weather. He knew every canyon, every ridge, every riverbed within days' ride of the town where he sometimes stopped for supplies. Yet, despite his deep familiarity with the desert, he never lost his sense of wonder. The world was vast, beautiful, and full of lessons, and Elias was determined to learn them all. In the town, Elias had become a quiet legend. People spoke of the lone cowboy who wandered the desert with his horse, helping travelers, guiding herds, and lending his hands and skills wherever needed. His life was simple, almost austere, yet there was an air of respect and admiration around him. Travelers and settlers alike trusted him, and even those who had never met him had heard stories of his integrity. One morning, as Elias prepared to leave the town after helping repair a small barn for an elderly couple, he noticed a small group of strangers in the distance. They moved with a purposeful calm, their eyes scanning the landscape as if looking for something or someone. Elias felt a quiet stir of curiosity but did not approach. The desert had taught him patience, and he preferred to observe before acting. The strangers camped for the night near the edge of a nearby canyon. From his vantage point, Elias could see they were respectful of the land, making no unnecessary noise, leaving little trace of their presence. But something about them felt different. There was an air of reverence in the way they moved, almost as if they understood the desert's unspoken rules. He watched from a distance, uncertain whether to introduce himself or simply wait and see. That night, Elias lay under the stars, Dusty grazing nearby. The cool wind brushed against his face, carrying the scent of sage and distant rain. He thought about the gold he had left in the canyon so many years ago. For over a decade, it had remained untouched, a secret known only to him and the desert. He had never sought to take it, never even hinted at its existence, but now, with these strangers near the canyon, a strange sense of anticipation filled him. The following day, Elias decided to approach the group. As he drew closer, he noticed their distinct features and attire. They were members of the Apache tribe, the same people whose land he had respected years ago. Their leader, an older man with deep-set eyes and a calm, commanding presence, stepped forward. Elias recognized him immediately from the stories passed down through the tribe, though he had never met him before. The leader spoke in measured, respectful tones. "Elias Harper," he said, "we know what you did many years ago. You found something precious on our land, yet you left it untouched. You honored our traditions when it would have been easy not to. For this, we have never forgotten you." Elias felt a surge of surprise and humility. He had never expected recognition, let alone gratitude from the tribe. "I did what I felt was right," he replied simply. "It was your land. The gold did not belong to me." The leader smiled, a quiet but profound smile. "You have lived with honor, Elias. Your life reflects the respect you showed. But now the desert wishes to repay you in its own way." Over the next few days, the tribe guided Elias to the hidden canyon, showing him the path that he himself had once traveled. The gold lay in the same place, gleaming under the sunlight, untouched and pure. But the Apache leader explained that they had not brought the gold to him as a gift to take. It was a symbol. They had prepared something else, something tangible, to repay his honesty and integrity. Elias listened with a mix of wonder and disbelief as the tribe revealed the plan. Over the years, they had watched him from a distance, observing his actions, his fairness, and his courage. They had seen how he helped others without seeking reward, how he lived simply and honestly, and how he treated the desert with respect. In recognition, they had gathered supplies, livestock, and resources to assist him in building a stable life. A life not built on gold or wealth, but on security, community, and respect. For Elias, the gesture was almost overwhelming. He had never expected repayment. He had only acted according to his principles. Yet here were the people whose land he had honored, offering him a chance to enjoy the fruits of his integrity. He realized then that life had a way of returning kindness and honesty in ways that were subtle yet profound. The tribe helped him establish a small homestead near the edge of the desert. They brought horses, livestock, and tools, teaching him how to manage the land sustainably. Elias worked alongside them, learning new techniques and sharing his own knowledge of the desert and its ways. It was a partnership built on mutual respect and understanding, a bond that transcended language and culture. As the months passed, Elias' life changed in ways he had never imagined. The homestead flourished, and the small community he built became a place of welcome for travelers and settlers alike. People came to him for guidance, for help with the land, and for advice on how to live honestly and respectfully in the harsh desert environment. His reputation grew further, not just as a skilled cowboy, but as a man of principle whose life exemplified the value of integrity. Elias often reflected on the path that had led him here. He thought of the moment he had discovered the gold, the long years of quiet, honest living, and the choices he had made. Every hardship, every lonely night, every day of labor had prepared him for this moment. The repayment from the Apache tribe was not simply a gift. It was a recognition of a life lived with honor, a life in harmony with the land and its people. The tribe's repayment was more than material support. It was also a lesson in trust, gratitude, and the deep connections that can exist between people and the land. Elias came to understand that life's true rewards are often invisible, found in the respect of others, the satisfaction of a clear conscience, and the bonds formed through shared understanding and mutual care. He spent his days working the land, tending to the animals, and helping the community grow. The desert, once a place of solitude and challenge, became a place of connection and purpose. He shared his knowledge of the desert with younger generations, teaching them how to live with respect for nature and for one another. In doing so, he became a mentor, a guide, and a living example of the power of integrity and patience. Despite the comfort and stability, Elias never forgot the Golden Canyon. Occasionally, he would ride out to see it, to witness the vein of gold that had sparked the journey of his life. He never considered taking it, for the lesson it represented was far more valuable than any wealth. It reminded him that choices define a person, that honesty and respect are treasures in themselves, and that true reward often comes when least expected. As the years continued, the bond between Elias and the Apache tribe deepened. They would visit him, share stories of their ancestors, and celebrate seasonal events together. Their lives intertwined, not through obligation but through mutual respect and admiration. For Elias, these relationships became some of the richest experiences of his life, far surpassing anything gold could provide. The story of Elias Harper and the Golden Canyon began to spread even beyond the desert towns. Travelers who had met him spoke of the cowboy who had left gold untouched and had been repaid years later by the very people whose land he had respected. It was a tale of honesty, patience, and the quiet power of doing the right thing. Children who heard it were inspired to value integrity over material gain, and adults reflected on the ways simple acts of respect can ripple through time. Through all of this, Elias remained humble. He did not seek recognition, and he did not speak often of his own achievements. He continued to live simply, guided by the same principles that had shaped him in the beginning. But now, with the support and trust of the Apache tribe and the community around him, he could live not only with survival in mind, but with purpose, meaning, and connection. The desert had given him lessons of endurance and patience, the gold had tested his integrity, and the tribe had rewarded his honesty in ways more profound than he could have imagined. It was a reminder that life has a rhythm, that choices matter, and that respect, once given, can return in ways that are subtle, unexpected, and life-changing. Elias Harper's story in Part 3 shows that honesty and integrity are powerful forces. They may go unnoticed for years, but their effects can grow quietly, eventually returning to enrich a life in ways beyond imagination. He had endured hardships, lived with restraint, and treated the land and its people with respect. And now, finally, the universe, through the kindness of the Apache tribe, had repaid him in a meaningful, lasting way. As he stood on the edge of his homestead looking out over the desert, Elias felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The Golden Canyon was still there, untouched, gleaming in the sunlight, but his heart was no longer tied to it. His true treasure was the life he had built, the bonds he had formed, and the knowledge that he had acted with integrity. The desert, the tribe, and his own choices had given him a reward far greater than he could have imagined, a reward that no gold could match in spirit. His hair was silver now, his hands lined with the years of hard work, and his face carried the quiet wisdom of experience. He had seen many seasons come and go, many travelers pass through, and many moments that tested the limits of patience and endurance. Yet, through it all, he remained the same man of honesty, integrity, and respect for the land that he had always been. The homestead he had built with the guidance and support of the Apache tribe had become a thriving, peaceful place. It was modest, but it provided security and comfort. The animals grazed in open fields, crops grew steadily with careful attention, and the structures Elias had helped build stood firm against the harsh desert weather. Visitors who came through the area often stopped at the homestead, drawn by the reputation of a man who lived simply yet generously, a man who embodied the lessons of the desert. Elias spent his days teaching the younger generation. Children from nearby towns, curious travelers, and even members of the tribe would gather around him to learn about the desert, about the ways of animals, and about living honestly and respectfully. He shared stories from his own life, carefully omitting details of the gold, instead focusing on lessons about courage, patience, and the importance of integrity. Even in his older years, Elias continued to ride through the desert, accompanied by Dusty, who had grown older as well but remained faithful and strong. They would travel the trails together, checking on water sources, inspecting fences, and ensuring that everything was in order. The desert had become more than a home. It was a teacher, a friend, and a mirror reflecting his own choices and values back at him. One day, as Elias rode along a familiar canyon path, he noticed signs of change in the land. New settlers had begun to move in closer, and the sound of distant tools and construction echoed faintly through the valleys. Though he welcomed the progress and the growth of communities, he remained vigilant, always mindful of the delicate balance of nature and life in the desert. He understood that the land could give generously, but also take swiftly if treated carelessly. On this particular day, Elias felt a deep sense of reflection. He thought about the gold he had discovered so many years ago, the decision he had made to leave it, and the long years that had followed. He realized that his life had been shaped not by wealth, but by choices, values, and the connections he had formed with people and the land. The gold had been a test, a moment that defined the direction of his life, but the real treasure had been the path he had chosen to walk. As the sun began to set, casting warm orange and pink hues across the desert, the Apache leader returned to visit him. They spoke in the soft, deliberate tones of mutual respect, sharing news of the tribe, the land, and the community that had grown around Elias' homestead. The leader reminded Elias that his life had become a bridge between worlds, the desert and civilization, the tribe and settlers, tradition and modernity. Elias listened quietly, grateful for the acknowledgement, yet humble as always. The leader also spoke of the Golden Canyon. The tribe had kept watch over it all these years, ensuring that it remained untouched and respected. They told Elias that his decision so long ago had inspired younger generations of the tribe to honor their own traditions and to act with integrity in ways big and small. The canyon and the gold it held had become a symbol, a reminder that respect and honesty are timeless virtues. Elias felt a sense of deep fulfillment. He had never sought recognition or reward, yet the universe had acknowledged his choices in its own quiet, profound way. The gold had remained untouched, and yet it had brought him far more than material wealth ever could. A life of purpose, meaningful relationships, and the respect of those who truly mattered. As the years continued, Elias found joy in the simple routines of life. He would wake at dawn, feed the animals, inspect the fields, and share meals with visitors and neighbors. In the evenings, he would sit by a fire, Dusty resting nearby, reflecting on the day, and listening to the sounds of the desert, the whisper of the wind, the call of distant birds, and the gentle rustling of leaves. Each sound reminded him of the delicate harmony of life and the importance of remaining mindful and respectful. Elias also witnessed the growth of the community he had helped nurture. Families settled nearby, children laughed and played, and travelers found safe passage through the desert thanks to the guidance he offered. His homestead became a place of learning, cooperation, and friendship, a living testament to the power of integrity and patience. People came to him for advice not because he demanded respect, but because he had earned it through years of consistent, honorable action. Despite his age, Elias never lost his adventurous spirit. He continued to explore the desert, seeking out hidden valleys, quiet streams, and the beauty that others might overlook. Dusty remained at his side, though slower now, moving with a careful grace that matched Elias' own pace. Together, they navigated the terrain, always observing, learning, and appreciating the world around them. One evening, as Elias watched the sun sink behind the distant mountains, he reflected on the long journey of his life. The gold, the canyon, the tribe, these had all played a role in shaping the man he had become. The hardships he had endured, the choices he had made, and the respect he had shown to others had created a life of meaning far greater than any fortune could provide. He understood more deeply than ever that true wealth was measured not in gold, but in integrity, relationships, and the knowledge that one had lived rightly. In the years that followed, Elias became a mentor not only to the youth, but also to travelers who sought guidance in living simply and honestly. He taught lessons of patience, courage, and respect for the land. He shared stories of the desert and the people who had shaped it, always emphasizing the importance of acting with honor, even when no one is watching. His wisdom, quietly gained through decades of experience, became a legacy that would endure long after he was gone. The Apache tribe continued to visit, maintaining the bond formed so many years ago. They celebrated seasons together, shared stories of ancestors, and exchanged knowledge. For Elias, these moments were priceless. They reminded him that the choice he had made so long ago, to leave the gold untouched, had created ripples that extended far beyond his own life. Integrity, respect, and honor had a power that gold never could. Even as his body grew older and slower, Elias' spirit remained vibrant. He found joy in simple tasks, tending to the animals, helping travelers, sharing stories, and walking through the desert that had been both home and teacher. Dusty, though aged, remained loyal, a constant companion who had shared in every step of the journey. Together, they embodied the quiet strength of a life lived with purpose and care. One day, Elias rode to the Golden Canyon, now more than a decade since he had first discovered the gold. The vein gleamed in the sunlight, as beautiful and untouched as the day he had found it. He stood quietly, reflecting on the years that had passed. The gold itself had never mattered. It was the choice he had made, the life he had lived, and the respect he had shown that had truly defined him. The canyon remained sacred, and the tribe continued to watch over it. Elias smiled, feeling a profound sense of peace. The desert, the gold, the tribe, and his own journey had all taught him lessons that he would carry for the rest of his life. He understood that a single choice, guided by conscience and respect, could shape not only one life, but the lives of many around him. As the sun set behind the canyon, Elias Harper turned dusty and rode back to his homestead. He knew that life was fleeting, but he also knew that he had lived fully, honestly, and with purpose. The community he had nurtured thrived, the tribe remained a presence of honor and wisdom, and the desert continued to teach and inspire. Elias' story had come full circle, a tale of honesty, patience, and the quiet, enduring power of integrity. In the years that followed, Elias' life remained a testament to the choices he had made. Travelers, settlers, and members of the tribe would speak of him with respect and admiration. Children learned from his example that doing what is right is often more valuable than wealth or recognition. Families remembered his kindness, neighbors remembered his honesty, and the desert remembered his quiet presence. Even as he grew older, Elias never regretted the path he had chosen. The gold in the canyon remained untouched, a symbol of respect and restraint. The repayment from the Apache tribe had provided security and community, but the true reward had always been the life he built, guided by principles that stood firm against time and temptation. Elias Harper's story ended not with riches or fame, but with a life of meaning, respect, and fulfillment. The Golden Canyon, the desert, the Apache tribe, and the community he had touched all stood as witnesses to a man who had lived rightly. And though he eventually passed from the desert trails he had walked for so many years, his legacy endured, a reminder that honesty, integrity, and respect are treasures greater than gold, and that the choices we make define the true value of a life.